And we're live. Hi everyone, this is Amateur Gamer, and I'll be returning to Civ 5 Vox Populi. And the new version has came out, the July 17th version. So this video will be, as usual, just kind of talk about the changes. And I picked Venice for this. I'm not actually gonna play through it. I'm gonna explain it, but Venice has some changes done to it. So, and it's probably one of the bigger ones. Another one is China, but we'll get through there. So, first, if we look at happiness, so some of the major changes is happiness and food growth, and I'll talk about those in a bit. But essentially, happiness should be easier to manage. So the first thing is for all difficulties, you have +2 happiness to the base. So in previous versions, I'm pretty sure, yeah, this is like 5. So if you look at the Empire is 5 from difficulty level, now it's 7. So it does scale. So for lower levels, it's also +2. Because before, for tradition, you actually get +2 happiness from your palace. Now it's just given to all the civs at all difficulty to just kind of make it up. And for happiness, in the past, if you remember before when I said, if you're unhappy, like if your unhappiness will exceed your happiness if you have a specialist, it will actually prevent you from making use of a specialist. But part of the issue is that, like, at the time, you use specialists to use up food so you don't grow as quickly so you can handle happiness, but instead, more unhappiness means you can't use specialists, means that your city will grow more, and if your city grows more, you'll grow more happy. And as you can see, that's a really bad downward spiral. So that's removed. So now there is no cap, but of course you will still experience unhappiness. I mean, personally, I felt the cap wasn't necessary. Like if you put more, if you have more unhappiness, it's like the happiness is already penalizing you a bit. You shouldn't penalize someone more by saying, hey, you can't work specialist either. Because sometimes working specialist can help you deal with some of your needs. And speaking of needs, so now, so the changes regarding the needs have been fixed. So one thing a lot of people complained about last version was a lot of distress, and the reason for that is the divisor was 25. So basically you have like how much yields you need divided by 25, that's how much unhappiness you get. At least that's what I think it is. Now it's 50 so that you'll have a bit more wiggle room. And of course, with the changes they made to the growth, I'm not sure how things are gonna work out. It's gonna be interesting, that's for sure. And then now the tech modifier 100 was 75. So overall, happiness should be easier to manage as a whole. Now, only time will tell if that's indeed the case, but yeah. For the time being, it's basically happiness should be easier to handle. Until I play any games, I can't say for sure. So then growth went through a bunch of changes. I'm not going to go through it because it's a bunch of math and I wasn't familiar with how growth worked before, so I'm not going to go through it. But the idea is this. Now growth is going to be harder, but growth, so because of this, a lot of buildings have been changed. there's less food overall. And the idea is that in previous versions, if you grow too much, you get penalized. You get a lot of unhappiness, and you have to build buildings to deal with those. So growth is largely seen as negative. But now growth is slowed down, so you need more food to grow. And I think once you get to a certain population, it's gonna be harder to grow or easier. I'm not sure, because before, what happens is growing to the first few populations pretty quick, but later on it slows down drastically. So I am curious how it goes, because it will affect a lot of things like the various pantheons, like goddess of fertility that gives you extra growth. So I'm not sure how those will change things up. And now let's talk about buildings, because buildings have, like, their base yields have been adjusted a lot. For example, let's just look at. So we have workshop. So workshop now is 2 flat production, and then 1 production per 10 citizen. Before it was a flat 5 production. So I think the main reason for that change is due to the internal trade route, where if you so internal trade routes generates +2 production. Actually, it might be something else. It might be factory that I'm getting confused with, because internal trade routes generates +4 production. Oh, they just give a flat yield, huh? Because before internal trade routes, what happens is, not with the workshop, but with the factory, when you complete the internal trade route, both the city receiving and sending that trade route gets like production, which is not bad, especially if you could speed up your trade routes. Okay, there is a mention now. I'll talk about it a bit later. I'll first talk about the yields. And then grocer, which is available here, now gives 1 food per 5 citizens. So for larger cities, it helps. For smaller cities, you won't even really notice it. Hospitals, +1 food per 10 citizens. I don't remember how much it was before, but before it was more flat yield. Now it's +2, and then 1 food per 10 citizen. And then, all right, workshop. Okay, so workshop, before workshop had gives you 1 free specialist without getting unhappiness. It's removed from workshop, and now it's added to the library, so that people could actually work the great scientist slot, which kind of makes sense, because if you don't go tradition and you don't have, well, I guess since you don't have the cap, it's fine. But now that you can work that, then you will experience more happiness. That makes sense. That's a nice change. Factory urbanization. So for factories, before it was 2 specialists, no longer produces unhappiness. Now it's just 1. I don't know how it will affect things. Like I said, some of these needs tests. And now internal trade route bonuses changed. So now it's just a flat bonus. So market gives 2 extra food for internal trade routes. I don't think they provided anything before. So this one gets +2. Not scaling with era, do note that. So early on it's not bad. Later on, not so good. And stockyard. Oh shoot. Yeah, what is stockyard? I hate it when they change the. I hate it when they change the name of certain things. I just don't know what the stockyard is. I legitimately don't know. Let me check. I think this was mentioned. Sometimes I wish they don't like just use the name that's being used in game, because otherwise the rest of us just don't know it. We haven't played it long enough to know. Um. Okay. Okay. Stockyard is agribusiness. Just so you know. Even I'm like, what the hell is that? It's pretty late. I don't even remember where you get access to it. Oh yeah, here. Agribusiness. So that's very late. Is that for fruit even gonna be? I mean, if you go for fealty industry and then go order, yeah, those internal trade routes, the percentages will matter. But otherwise, I don't even know if they're really that relevant. Only time will tell. And then now workshop is, as I said earlier, +2 production, and factories give +4. Yeah, I don't know how relevant those are, because I remember the production is not that strong. Like, unless you went tradition where your city don't have the best infrastructure and don't have the best production, these could like make up these internal trade routes can make up a pretty relevant amount of production for your cities. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's also mannequins, so interesting. Wait. Grocer produces one happiness. Ha, interesting. I thought they were gonna make another specialist on like remove one specialist on happiness, but one happiness is pretty strong. That's a pretty good reason to build it, especially if you have those resources: banana, coffee, tobacco, and tea. Definitely worth it. Or maybe you go Austria then. Whoa, then that mean Austria's. Wait, is it? Um, I wish I'd. So does that mean the Austrian coffee house? No, it doesn't generate +1. But this does replaces grocer. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I'll mention it on the forum. Okay, so some big changes. First, we have Venice. So Venice. So now instead of finding towns, so instead of merchant of Venice being able to create towns, like a better town replacement, now they are able to settle cities. Oh, special colonial towns. Colonia. So Colonia starts with 3 pop and 3 extra tiles, as well as a market and then a monument. Venice can have max 3 Colonia at one time. So the idea was, before, Venice has a lot of empty territory around it, and people usually ban Venice because if, like, for example, if you're playing on continents and the other continent has a Venice, then the other AIs on that continent has more room to expand, and Venice is usually pretty irrelevant. The idea of the Colonia is that it will allow them to settle 3 like cities, so that yes, there will still be more land for their neighbors to settle, but not as much, and Venice will have a better chance because it has more cities, so more supply cap, and the idea is they'll survive better. Whether or not that will happen under the AI, it's hard to tell, because Venice is very unique for humans. It's pretty fun for AI. It's questionable at times how they fare. So next, Piazza also give +5, +5, uh, flat supply, and arsenal gives +5 supply cap. So the idea is that with those extra supply cap, you'll be able to essentially feel a larger force so you can better defend yourself, and hopefully the AI will be able to take advantage of that, but time will tell. Now, another pretty big change is Ethiopia. So the idea is their unique building was a bit too powerful. Before it was 2 culture, 3 faith, which is a lot, and they usually find pretty early and just become like really snowbally with religion. So now their faith got reduced from 3 to 2. So they will still be very competitive. They just won't be the first to find a religion by a wide margin, depending on the other civs. If there are no other religious civs, they could probably find a religion on standard speed, I don't know, 20, 30 turns ahead of the second one. That's a huge lead. And of course, there's also before culture cost of acquiring tiles was 33%, now it's 25%, because that was ridiculous. And also, before their unique ability gives them 1 faith for strategic resource, now that's removed. That's fine. That's extra faith that they don't really need. I mean, they were already pretty strong before. So this is a welcome change because it makes Ethiopia still strong, but not stupidly powerful in finding religions extremely quickly. Because before, it was hard to challenge them in terms of religion because they find it so quickly. And speaking of religion, there is change to one of the Celts pantheons. Epona the Great Mare. So, what happened was before this was science, culture, and food. They get received 10 of each when border expands, scaling with era. Now it's just science, culture, and gold because, like I said before, growth is experiencing a situation where it's harder to get food. You should be rewarded for getting food, and growing is harder, so a lot of these pantheons and such are being changed. Though, interestingly enough, Goddess of Fertility didn't get changed, so I wonder if that might become too powerful. Because it does have, I mean, if you look at 25%, that's a percentage, so that is pretty strong. So I wonder if that will get nerfed a bit. I'm curious. Only time will tell, though. And next, Arabia. Arabia for their unique building. Before this was +4 gold, now it's +3 gold. Not a huge change. The unique building is already very powerful. So I wouldn't say that this is a huge nerf. And then I'll be right back. Sorry about that, just had to walk away for a bit. So next we have Germany, which is, for Germany, the unique ability before with allies is 2 science, 2 culture, 2 golden age points. Now it's 2 culture and 2 golden age points. And for friends, before it was 1 science, 1 golden age points, 1 culture. Now it's 2 science and 2 golden age points. So that's been changed. I'm not sure if it's a nerf or not, because before friends you get only 1, and allies you get 2. This does scale with era, so friends you actually get more benefits. So for allies you get less. Yeah, only time will tell. And now there are haunts. Let's see, what did it change? So now it's changed to plus 4% production. Before it was 3, now it's 4. So Germany was really strong at one point. At some point they got nerfed, but I wasn't able to play them, so I wasn't sure. So now they're trying to adjust the numbers to help them get to a good spot. I don't know if I do know that if you send a lot of city to city states, those productions start adding up quite a bit, and you can have some really high production cities. But yeah, only time will tell. Now, next we have China. China's change is not like a lot, but it's huge. Before it was +1 culture and food in all cities when you create cities or gaining cities. Now it's gold instead of culture, so that is a pretty big change. And during era you also reduced by 50%. So overall, this will be interesting because they get food and gold, huh? The food will help them grow, especially now that there's less sources of food overall. But that gold is, I mean, that gold could play a pretty big role. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, culture was very strong. That's what made China quite broken. Like, China didn't consistently win, but the culture made it so that China is usually guaranteed to always lead in policies until much later. And the only one to catch up to them is usually the human player, because the human player knows how to plan for the long term. So that's why. Yeah, this is a pretty big change. I don't know how it's gonna affect China, so until I play it, I'm not gonna. I mean, it will probably make them very powerful, always leader to maybe a decent Civ. Only time will tell. I'll have to also face them in game to see what happens. And next we have India, which is also experiencing some changes because of how growth works. So, unique building. Now what happens is, before it was +2 production, +4 food. Now it's +3 production, +3. I mean, +3 food, +3 production. So that's just kind of shifting numbers. You still have a total of 6 net yields, but I guess you can't measure it that way. And then Oasis now give you 2 production instead of 2 food. Lake gives you 2 production instead of 2 food. And Farm gives 1 food, 1 production instead of 2 food. So as you can see, less food overall, more production. So yeah, I'm not sure how India is gonna change, because that's quite a bit of production overall. And when you get this, oh man, aqueducts. Oh, this is, yeah, the production you could get is quite a bit, especially in the right circumstances. Because before, growing a lot really hurts you. Now the idea is you don't grow a ton, but you get production in return. Time will tell. And now, policies. So for policies, for refinement, under artistry, now it's +1 happiness from all guilds, and for every 3 great works in a city. You no longer get the 2 free specialists, but personally, I feel like this is a pretty big nerf to refinement, because I guess what they need to do is put back the +10% culture in all cities during golden ages, because that was moved to cultural exchange, because at the time they felt like refinement was too stacked. So I think they should move that back if that was going to be the case. And then for tribute, now you get gold instead of food when border expands. Honestly, I didn't mind the food for this, because your border growth is gonna slow down, so it's not a ton of food. And for progress, they removed the food from. Before it was culture and food when you construct buildings. Now the food is removed. The culture is now 15 instead of 10, so you'll get more culture. Actually, that's a nice change. I don't feel like food is a big issue. Since you're going wide, you don't want your cities to grow enormously. And now finisher now it's 25 gold instead of 15 gold when a citizen is born in any cities. Okay. So a bit more gold overall. Next we have statecraft, trade confederacy. So now you have a choice. Do you want to send a trade route to a city-state to get influence, or do you want to send trade routes to civilizations that are ahead of you so you could catch up in science and culture? And don't forget, you get more yields from trade routes, so that could be pretty strong. So you really have to think about how, well, either that or you maximize the number of trade routes you have. I like that. That's a nice change. And then next we have fealty. So before you get 2 food from castles, now you get plus 2 gold. Wow, that's quite a bit of gold. You get gold from armories, gold from castles. Yeesh. Well, I mean, since it's a warmonger, I guess it makes sense. And now, oh, so before the trade route to civilization ahead gives you more yields was here, but now you have one specialist no longer produces unhappiness. That's interesting. They're switching things around, trying to make all of them relevant. I like that. I definitely like that change. So next we have specialist. Merchants plus 4 gold base was plus 3. I don't know why they do that. Just to generate more gold. Actually, some of the changes make it so that, yeah, the buildings that have merchant specialists are a bit weaker, so I guess they want to make up for it by making merchant specialists stronger. I think that's the reason. So, and also now you get less culture and size for international routes, so it's harder to catch up. I guess that's to make these kind of policies more valuable overall, because now you get less science and culture. Okay, that makes sense. And there's also some adjustment to combat strength and range combat strength. So like for melee, they get a slight boost. I'm not gonna go through all of it. I mean, you can find. I mean, for a lot of people, you probably wouldn't know this, but it's meant to give them a bit more survivabilities, and for some of the range combat strength for the so combat strength for infantry line got increased by a little bit, and the range combat strength for some of the late game range units like Gatling gun, cavalry, or later, they got dropped a bit. So basically, they're less dangerous to infantry, and infantry have a better chance of surviving. So it makes them a bit more relevant. Alright, that's fine. So yeah, this is gonna be the end of this video. There's quite a few changes. You definitely need to play to really get a feel of it. Right now it's too early for me to tell whether